What's up, folks? Khalid Bay. In our last episode, we talked about the upheaval that is Washington, D.C. This episode, we want to continue in that discussion and talk about the impacts of said turmoil on our local environment, our local politics, our local economies, the impact of the gas station and the grocery store, as previously mentioned. It should be an interesting discussion. Let's get to it. Let's talk. Good afternoon.
How we doing?
Yeah, there's a lot going on.
Absolutely, been a couple of weeks, but got into some financial issues last time, and it's funny. A lot of people have been talking about, just what kind of investments are there right now that make sense, and how do I grow a steady thing, a steady portfolio. And we covered a lot of those bases last time. So.
We did. Right now, today we talking about getting into the impacts of the turmoil in Washington, D.C., its effects on our local politics, and wanted to hear your opinion on that. You hear the horns blowing in the background because there's a protest going on outside. We'll comment on that later.
Yeah.
But,
right now we're coming into midterm territory.
That's right.
And before we get there, we're coming into primary territory.
Yeah.
Primaries are taking place now across the country.
Yeah.
And on the midst and overlaying all of that is this gerrymandering, redistricting issue.
Wow.
That's really causing some turmoil. But that's the kind of the thing that's going on. The more chaos that can be generated by the administration, it gives them the opportunity to come in and say, stop, let's do this isn't right, challenge the election. And that's what we really have to start to guard against. I'm hoping and I that there are good teams of political advisors and attorneys, constitutional lawyers, and statewide and across the country that are looking at these at every level, so that the challenges are met when they come due. We can't be left flat-footed at the end and say, oh, we got to do it over again, or that didn't count.
It's interesting because when you look at, you have to consider, from my perspective, a couple of things. Whether we're talking about the gerrymandering, which is understandably an attack on what's usually disenfranchised communities in an effort to disenfranchise the vote. You have the recent, what do you want to call it, molestation of the Civil Rights or the Voter Rights Act by the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Arguably to the same end. But when you factor in the math, the impact of certain populations, let's say in this case, I'll use what's referred to as the African American, what is the impact? When you look at the voter impact in any given election, for the African American population, which for all intents and purposes has played the part of a swing vote to some degree, but hasn't been a majorly impactful voting bloc.
Yeah, there's been.
So explain. I want to get the logic of the effort to gerrymander or to reduce voter protections for a group that hasn't really been a political threat.
I think you make a great point, Khalid, and I've been involved in the elections for many years, and we've always noticed that the turnout, especially in the African American community, has been low.
Right.
Voter turnout is low, so when you really think you're spending a lot of time and effort and everything to get fewer votes or few votes, is it worth it? What's the big impact? But I think it's very localized. I think there could be a huge impact in some places in the South versus places here, so that I think, and that's why I think that's the beauty of having the states run the elections. and not having a nationalized, election procedure, because the states are in better position to understand how to create a fair and free election in their localities.
Well, I think that's a great point, and it's kind of the focus of our discussion, that actions taken on the federal level will have greater impact in our local environments, more so than what we would see. We won't see any mass changes on national elections necessarily.
No.
But when you're talking about your councils, your towns, your congressional person, so on and so forth, those elections that are local, if this kind of gerrymandering and the impacts of this amendment or these changes to the voter rights bill kind of take place, then you'll really see the impact of the voting disenfranchisement on a local level.
Yeah, so we see what the challenges are, but I mean, this is the Supreme Court has spoken, and you don't go beyond that. So you have to kind of deal with what they've come up with. It's going to be a huge impact in Louisiana, where it was challenged, and the Voter Rights Act there was kind of set aside essentially.
Yeah.
But I think that I'm a fan of the dissent there. That you have to take the historical perspective into account. Why the districts were drawn in that way in the first place.
That's right.
Because when you're trying to overcome a very harsh punitive system that penalizes a group of people based on race or another protected category, if it was religion or if it was gender, these are protected categories, but in particular race. You can't just say, okay, we're just going to do away with that.
Right.
Where's the study that says that
it produces something of value?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Where is the the science behind it that says that this isn't having the right effect that we're trying, or it's not necessary anymore? Yeah. They just put their finger up in the wind because the climate, and say, okay, now's a good time to get rid of the Voting Rights Act.
Right.
Because it's because of the political climate that Republicans, let's call it what it is, and it's really the MAGA term of the Republicans. And this all goes back to 2016 and 2020 elections, where you were thinking in 2012 and so on, when Barack Obama got elected, there was talk in the country, and for good reason. When you look at the demographics, just the rise of Hispanic communities, of Asian communities, of minority communities, vis-a-vis the overall population, you start to think that you're going to have minority, the traditional white majority is going to become a minority.
Right, yeah.
And then you get this kind of backlash of holding on to power. And that's where you get this MAGA thing of holding on to power. Now, this dismantling of the Voting Rights Act is just another step in that whole overall shift in our politics and thinking, and it's done to prevent minority control of certain districts or of elections. And when I say minority, I mean it's just everybody except for traditional white voters. On the other hand, this gerrymandering, I do think that could have a backlash effect. It's already had a backlash effect, like in places like California and Virginia and others have determined that we're going to just fight fire with fire. But more than that, and I think that even more interesting than that anyway, is when you get a wave election. And so in other words, the mood of the country is going 60, 70, 80% one way. Then even in those newly gerrymandered districts, they don't have the intent of, they won't have the intent of protecting or growing a party, because everybody, now you have, instead of the chance of 1 in 5 of winning an election, now you have a chance of 2 in 5 or 3 in 5 of winning it, because everybody is voting a certain way. And you have a chance of maybe getting over that 50%. But I want to go back and just talk a little bit about what we said from the beginning of the whole shooting match here is, we got to stay local, we got to stay focused locally. Things have taken place in the last year and a half that this new administration's been in. And I think that, as we've predicted all along, it's one of those cases where they've done so many things that are contrary to what the majority of people want to see happen.
Well, you take, for example, what has become the political environment, or more appropriately, the disdain, increasing disdain that people have for the two-party system.
Yeah.
And you're seeing the impacts locally where non-enrolled numbers, and let's blur the lines between non-enrolled and independent to a degree,
right,
are greater in some areas than the Republican or Democrat.
I think they're becoming greater in many areas, if not most.
Yeah, so you have this sort of ambiguous voter.
Yeah.
Who will ultimately, and it may be more intelligent, choosing the issue more than they are the party, or.
And I think what's happening, choosing the person, choosing the interest,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of the party, and I think that's been going on. There's been an erosion of the support or of the dominance of the traditional parties. Although we still need them, it's good to have two good, strong parties, but their brands have been so degraded. The Democratic brand, if you say I'm a Democrat, well, you're only going to get 20-30% support for saying that.
Yeah.
As opposed to before you would get 55-60% support.
Yeah.
You've eroded that support. And I think in the same with Republicans. That where's the Republican brand? There is no Republican brand.
No.
They're not Republicans.
I think
not conservative Republicans as we knew them.
When you look at the momentum, it is not impractical to imagine a future where there is no two-party system.
Yeah, it's not. It's certainly on the horizon.
And it's steamrolling so fast that some real impact of it, which I think we're already seeing now, could be had in our lifetime.
Yeah. Well, we got a Democratic socialist by name as the mayor of the biggest city, or the city, the most important city in the country, New York City. There's Democratic Socialist people that run on the Democratic line, but they associate themselves as Democratic Socialists, which, before they were called progressives or something else, but now they actually have this, and Bernie Sanders, I guess, is leading that, but he was also known as an independent, so you're right. There are more and more people gravitating to these other named, I guess you call them party affiliations, but I think the more thing is people just don't like the idea of a party affiliation.
They don't, and the effort to be independent, to demonstrate their ability to think on their own, to make their own decisions, to not be influenced by partisan politics, or what the new wave is, to not be impacted by what's going on in D.C., is what a lot of people appear to be shooting for. And so
I think you're absolutely right. The problem is there's a huge difficulty in this that people are not understanding. They're disenfranchising themselves when they do that, and here's why. The state laws, especially, I can speak to New York. State laws require you to be registered in a party to vote in that party's primary. Now, some of them are changing where they have open primaries, and anybody can vote in a primary. So that's probably where it's going. But in states where you have to be registered, so you want to be an independent, if you're not you're not associated with a Democrat or Republican, you can't vote in those two primaries.
But here's just playing the devil's advocate. I don't think they care. Just even in my own campaign last year, I came up short 249 votes, and that was because of independence. So and low Dem turnout, to be quite frank. I would probably blame it more on a low Democratic turnout than on the non-enrolled. And some people appear to be content enough where we'll beat you in the general.
Yeah.
We'll just wait until the general.
You have to get on the line, because if you win a primary, you're automatically on the line.
That's right.
You're automatically on the ballot. So you have to go through a separate process to get enough signatures to qualify to be on a ballot. And then you're going to be in a lower category on the ballot. You're not going to be on the top level category. But you're right. People don't care, and maybe that's the way it's headed.
And I think right now they don't care. And if we think about, you look at the divide right now. You got the progressive, which may or may not necessarily be a democratic socialist.
Mm-hmm.
You have the moderate leaning more, I mean, and I'm just talking about the Democratic Party alone is probably splintered into 3 or 4 pieces.
It is, yeah.
And has spread that way across the country. That's not just in some local.
Oh no, it's everywhere.
Local scenario.
It's everywhere now.
And so what that says is the common ideal that is democratic is what's missing.
Yeah.
Each one has an idea of what they think it means to be Democrat.
Yeah.
And unless there's a consensus,
I think there are consensus though around when you lay out the policies. The consensus is very similar. It's very strong, and I think that's where, I think the traditional Democratic candidate has to be able to speak to. So these are my policies. So you take like a New York City race, or anyways, across the country. And you get someone approaching you from a different angle, like a Democratic Socialist, or they want to say they're progressive or independent. Say, well, what are your policies? Are you pro-union? Are you pro living wage? Are you against tariffs? Are you against authoritarian moves? Are you for checks and balances? Are you for affordability issues? Where do you stand on health care? Where do you stand, universal health care? If you line those all up with like a Democratic candidate from the traditional, you'll see how similar they are.
I think the same, and even me using the Democrats as an example was equally a play on the Republican splinter as well, right? It applies to both major parties. When I think about all the things you mentioned, if I go out to the average millennial, right?
Yeah.
And we can say all those things and they will agree.
Yeah.
And then they'll say but.
Mm-hmm.
This is the wave right now. Let's just call it the but wave.
They're going to say but it hasn't come through.
Or but what about this? And but what about that? I'm gonna be candid here.
Yeah.
And I think I mentioned to you when I heard 3 of the ideas that Mondani had for New York City.
Yeah.
I knew those wasn't gonna happen.
Yeah.
Certainly not right now. $30 an hour minimum wage.
Yeah.
Free supermarkets in every district.
Yeah.
And free public buses.
Yeah.
None of that was happening. Not without ridiculous costs being passed on to the taxpayer, which is now the discussion.
Yeah. So you can come out and promise the world, but can you deliver? We're going to see what you can deliver.
I think there's a lot of that is going to kind of be replicated in a lot of places.
But
it's going to get interesting.
Even at certain levels of the Democratic Party, they're talking about, a universsul income, not just minimum wage. So here's the thing: these things are all possible. They really are. With the amount of money that we have in this country, with the amount of wealth that we have in this country, these things are possible. It's a matter of will to how we're going to put it together. So what are we going to cut to give to that?
So let's all right. So when we say the amount of money we have in this country, that's a tricky statement. Not tricky from you, but that's a tricky statement because most people, and I'm saying most of the population, which is why most of the population is not wealthy, don't understand financial behavior.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about the most amount of the amount of money we have, that's kind of trivial.
It shouldn't be though.
It shouldn't be.
It should be because when you have, I'm talking large corporations, pharmaceuticals, oil business, oil tycoon. Then you get to after you get to the money in business. Then you get to the money of the individuals. Then you get to the money of the next level of individuals. You add all that up. That's more money than the history of the world, than any country's had in the history of the world.
Yeah, without a doubt.
And so if you just say we want to take a segment of that. And we want to provide, we're going to provide tuition assistance for every public school right through college. You could do it. Mm-hmm. If that was your goal, you could do it. Mm-hmm. If you wanted to take a Danny situation, say we want to provide free busing, you could do it.
With whose wallet?
No, but I'm saying you look at the companies.
Right.
Start with the major companies. Start with.
So we're talking about redistribution.
Redistribution. It's a reallocation. How we're spending our tax dollars and how we're taxing.
tax dollars.
Yep.
I don't have a disagreement about tax dollars.
Yep.
You know, digging in Rob's pocket, I kind of have a little bit more of a problem.
But you got to get to the tax dollars by saying, if you're over this limit, if you're over this number, then we're talking about this. Is there a higher tax?
Policy.
Is there a higher tax? Yeah. Is there a different tax for corporations than we have right now?
Okay.
Like, for example, Forbes, 25 years ago, what was his name? Came out with, just think about a flat tax, 10%.
Yeah.
10%. If you just did that, actually did that, forget, there's no loopholes, there's no write-offs, there's no deductions. It's just 10%.
I'm going to stick to this devil's advocate route.
Okay.
All right, and what, you know, even as a Democrat myself, you know, we have to have the greatest ability and the greatest will to critique our own thoughts and ideas, right? And not, you know, when you talk about critiquing your opponent, there's always a level of unauthenticity, a lack of authenticity there. Whether they're critiquing,
you gotta look in the mirror, right?
You gotta look in the mirror,
yeah.
right? I'm the look in the mirror guy, and there's just some things that while they are doable, you know, they have a certain level of fantasy.
Yeah.
You know, and so I'm gonna carefully walk into this point. You know, what is the nature of our operation here? Yeah. Right? And when you think about it, let's talk about is it Citizens United?
Yeah.
What's the case? The Supreme Court, right?
That's the case everybody's talking about.
Where they passed a law to allow super PACs to raise money. Money was a method to acquire and or spend money, paraphrasing, is what they qualify as the artificial person's right to free speech. I'm just drawing a parallel because that is their method of communication.
Yep.
Right?
You can spend your money any way you want.
And the effort to dismantle that, Occupy Wall Street, Occupy, you know, South Salina Street, you know, you had a lot of that going on at the time. And I'm going to recall a moment when I talked to a reporter, and even the guy who was organizing it locally. And it was like, yeah, we got to do this. And then I asked the question. I'm just going to leave this there. Don't come looking for me now. So the United States of America has a Dun & Bradstreet number.
We talked about this.
You know, so I mean, what does that say?
Yeah, it's a company.
Yeah, it's a company. It's a corporation. So what? Dismantle what exactly? And what does it do?
Yeah. To
our administrative operation? And that therein lies the real quagmire that the average person has no clue about.
Well, you got to explain that. You got to walk through that, and that's a deep dive.
That's a deep dive.
You know, that's a deep dive. But you know, I think that we do understand collection of taxes. We do understand the tax rate.
Absolutely.
And we do understand the distribution of taxes. And we do understand if you look at a budget, any budget, you can look at the state budget right now. You can look at the federal budget. And you look at entitlements, they call it, Social Security, Medicaid, and then you look at the military spending. And that's 95% of our spending.
I'm going to tell you something. I first of all, can't deny that. And one thing I 100% agree with the idea. I've always said that the greatest use of public money is to empower the individual and the family.
Yeah.
Right? Because you reduce that person's dependency on the same.
So that gets to the personal income.
Yeah, without a doubt.
So they started out at $10,000. Give everybody $10,000. Now they're talking, give everybody $100,000.
I used to keep this a secret, right?
But if you just do the math.
I used to keep this thing a secret. I'm going to say it for the first time on here. Right? I used to keep this thing a secret. You know, because I didn't have any idea about who the right person was to say this to.
Yeah.
I'm going to say it. You know, even on the subject now, many people who look like me may not agree about this, even on the subject of reparations. Yeah. You know, but I had the idea before. You know, reparations. What if you gave every descendant of slaves, and put air quotes on that.
That would be the thing.
850 credit score. Wipe that debt clean and let them start over. Now, if you cut me a check, my capacity for managing money is going to demonstrate very early whether I will end back up in the poorhouse or if I would do something.
And it's not. That goes for anybody at
that
any
goes
level.
For anybody, right? So you
people.
can't control the will of the person who wants to spend.
Right.
But some of them will make that money grow.
Yeah.
Similarly, with debt erasing an 850 credit score and cooperating banks.
Yeah. What a great idea.
Oh, people will balloon. I got the solutions, reparations, and everything. That's it.
That's a great idea.
Wipe the slate clean.
That's a great idea.
And let me talk to you.
And there's nothing wrong, and that's why I'm a supporter, believer in the affirmative action, and the Voting Rights Act, because if you're talking about descendants of slaves, that's a category that qualifies. The only other two categories in my book that qualify would be indigenous people. They would qualify.
That's a debatable subject matter.
Well, okay. You don't think
I'm not going to start that trouble.
all this is debatable.
Yeah.
Debatable. But
we'll talk off camera about that one.
But no, I mean, that's what I'm talking. And then women too, at some level.
Oh, absolutely.
And women in general should be counted. The reason where I draw the line is, or where I can break the category from everything else, is the federal government. And I think we talked about this. The federal government in the Constitution did not recognize you. Mm-hmm. If you were not recognized in the Constitution,
have rights.
Then you didn't have rights. Mm-hmm. Then we have to make up for those rights along the way.
That's right.
But I don't think that applies to, Europeans that came here, blacks that came here from Africa, Asians that come here, Hispanics. I don't see the affirmative action necessity for any of those people. Any of those categories. But I do for the other three. I hope I'm not pissing anybody off out there.
I mean, we probably are a little bit.
It's just one way to think about it. I mean, it's in the Constitution. You got to do something about it.
You have to. There's always the concern. I always give consideration to the why. Mm-hmm. The why has yet to have been answered. Even how we started this dialogue. What is the purpose of targeting or making a targeted effort to disenfranchise a group that doesn't really have a consistent impact on the federal election, right? And
they just fear. I think it's just fear. I think it's that they fear that they do.
Yeah.
They just fear the numbers, and they don't fear the actual result. The actual, in practice, voting numbers. They just fear the population.
I get the logic too of the new majority minority, right?
Yeah.
That at some point, and I watched the interview. It was an Asian gentleman talking to a white gentleman. And I'm only saying that just for context. And the white gentleman was a Christian white nationalist. And he said pretty plainly, well, our concern is we don't want to be the minority here. Yeah. And so we need to...
Exactly.
We need to reduce the number of people of color in this country.
He just said it out loud. That's exactly what it is. And that's what Christian white nationalists stand for. That's what it's all based upon. And that's what they're promoting. If you look right through their strategy, that's their promotion. And this is one effect of it. Is Alito and Clarence Thomas, which is bizarre to me, but
he's bizarre.
And these guys ramming this stuff through at the Supreme Court level. I mean that's what it comes down to. It's taking that Christian white nationalist attitude and agenda and ideology and just pushing it through and trying to hold on, create laws that maintain that system.
And you have to consider all that is in some way different that we're experiencing now, because we've always had struggles. Mm-hmm. But the boldness, of certain actors in government and the like has had a devastating effect in the local environment, politically and otherwise. And I have to reiterate the fact that the gentleman has, about 3 years or so to go. So the importance of the midterms, right. The importance of the midterms, of course, cannot be understated.
It cannot be because this is the chance to reverse the course back, to get the pendulum to swing back to where it belongs. Mm-hmm. Center left is where it needs to be. Yeah. Center right at times is okay, but it can't be far or far. And right now we're way off the chart on the right. And I think this is the chance in the midterms to take the country back to where it needs to be.
I want to bring up one more thing before we bring this to a close, Rob.
Yeah.
I don't know, you probably came across it already. In the spirit of
what?
The gentleman who names everything after himself.
Oh, my God.
He has now written an executive order to establish the Trump IRA in an effort to, they say, replace the 401k, to do away with the 401k, because 56 million Americans who work don't have access to a 401k, arguably true. and they can't pay the 1.26%, which is a higher cost of 1.621 of the two. And so they're talking about a Trump IRA that's with a ceiling of 0.15% on interest. No matching, of course, but the government will donate $1,000 for long as you're working to it annually to the IRA. And the idea is that it's performing better because it has less costs, and so on and so forth. And it's portable. Yeah. Where if you
whatever job you go, wherever you be,
you can take it with you, right? Which is typical IRA anyway. But
he's got his name on it.
He's got his name on it.
Well, he did that thing with newborns now. There's a newborn account. It's $1,000 for every child born. You can start a Trump account. They call them Trump accounts. And you put $1,000. The government will give you $1,000 for every new child, and then you can fund that Trump account every year.
It will be interesting to witness, to watch the effort of the post-Trump era try to erase all of this.
I think if you take the name off of it,
footprints.
Right. Well, there's a lot of things you just have to take the name off. Period. But if you take the name off of this and leave
some of these Center.
Yeah, absolutely. Ridiculous. This is the insanity of what we're living in now. It's such an authoritarian,
start writing my name on everything.
The hats, the whole thing. It's all, fascist, tropes. Every bit of it. Put your picture on the wall of a building. You see that? It's like, what is this? Chairman Mao?
I mean, the thing is, and we said it in a podcast before. He relishes at what was the power in his mind of a Joseph Stalin.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. That dictator ideal that he jokes about from time to time. This recent statement about when he leave office in 8 to 9 years. I mean, so we know that's his MO. Crack the joke, but he's really serious.
No, it's serious. It's all about him. I relate it because I really, really followed it for so many years and studied it so many years. I related to Mussolini's Italy and the rise of Hitler in Germany. And you say Hitler and everybody flips out of their chair, but because they think about the killing of the Jews in 1940, but they don't think about how Hitler was from 1925 to 1938. How was he there? Right. What did he do there that's different? Show me the differences. List the differences.
Right.
There ain't none. No. The uniforms, the hats, the naming of things. Only I can fix it. I'm going to take care of all your problems. I'll decide if the war is good or not. I'll go by my own morality. It's a retribution against my perceived enemies and the people that I've lost to in the past. All this is so similar. Same thing with Putin. Putin, we saw the fall of the Soviet Union, and his whole life cycle has been to just restore that power and defeat the West.
Listening to you talk, it brings to mind earlier discussions, and I won't backpedal on none of it. We talked about Project 2025.
Yeah.
I made the statement there are a few things in there that I see as logical. There's a lot of things in there that I see as not so logical. But the most alarming thing is the early statement in the packet that says that the aim of Project 2025 and the Heritage Group is the reorganization of the federal government.
Yeah.
That is the aim.
Yeah.
And this is the part that people have to grasp. Well, nobody has called this, and I'm going to call it this now.
Yeah.
Don't come looking for me. This is legitimately a legal coup.
Yeah.
And this may be the intelligence of it, or maybe even what's more frightening about it.
No, it's the
fact that they're doing it right before your eyes.
Yeah, exactly right.
On paper,
it's a coup. It's a regime change.
It's doing it in a lawful way.
Right down the line. They got the Supreme Court being compliant just enough to make it happen, and they got Congress. There is no Congress.
No. Congress is on vacation.
Thune and Johnson, those two patsies should be run out of town. But here's the thing: the one thing that we have here that they didn't have other places, we do still have a media that does somewhat cover, but they won't say this. This is where our media falls apart.
That's right.
Our media should be telling people about what a coup looks like.
That's right.
And what
This is what it looks like.
What it looks like to change your democracy. Then what steps would you take if you wanted to get rid of your democracy? And tell me what he hasn't done.
And whether it has happened already to some degree.
Exactly.
The statement that there is no Congress is indeed true, because Congress right now has no will.
No will. No will. It's
None.
It's just the will. If you ask somebody, what do you think about this? Well, what does Trump want to do? That's what it is. What if he reverses his decision and it's exactly the opposite? That's fine. That's what it is.
That's right.
There is no logic, no debate, no science, no anything behind any of the answers or any of the discussion. It's simply whatever he wants. That's whatever
He's going to have WWE or what is it, mixed martial arts
on the
front lawn of the White House.
What a great idea. Why didn't we think of that?
Leave us your comments. Let us know what you think, because times are interesting, and we want to know what you think about everything that's going on.
Hey,
Khalid Bey.
Rob Romeo. First steps here. You got the primaries. Get out there and vote, and then point all your efforts, everything you can do to safeguard and look after the midterms.
That's right.
So let's find our beauty and grace in that.
All right.
Take care.